Hey everybody, it's Kat, and I want to welcome you to this episode of Backstory Sessions. I'm joined today by my co-host Willie. Hey Willie.
Hey, Kat, how are you?
Well, I'm excited for today's episode. These stories of love in February. Um, it's just a time I always look forward to. And today's is a bit different than the stories that we've been telling. So
Oh, okay.
I'm really excited to hear, a different perspective on love and what love can mean in February. Our guest today, he never expected to become a parent at 55, but his 90-year-old mother needed him, and he stepped out of the bachelor life and into the role of caregiver, a full-time caregiver. And,
Well,
that is quite a leap from one way of living to another, I would imagine.
oh, I'd say so.
Well, he has written a memoir about this, A Cup of Tea on the Commode. And, I found that title to be quite interesting.
Yes, maybe we'll find out how he came up with it.
Well, we can certainly ask. Well, I think we should jump right into the interview and talk with Mark and, find out all the things that will make this story beautiful.
Let's do it.
All right, Mark, I want to welcome you to Backstory Sessions, and we really appreciate you telling your story and being our guest today.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to share it. It's funny, I didn't even think about it in February, but this whole journey, it was a 3.5 journey with my mom that actually started about 2 weeks into February, way
Wow,
back
just
in 2011. So I never thought about that. Yeah.
how
Um,
interesting.
yeah.
The
So good
timing.
timing.
Yeah. Well, they say timing's everything. So, I do think this is a really unique time to have this episode. Um, so going back to your life at 55, a bachelor, what was life like at that point for you?
Well, at the time I was living in Los Angeles. I had been living there for maybe over 25 years, and I was pursuing the acting business. And I was also, I had at that time a snack food company that my brother and I started to honor my father and his invention of this pop, half popped popcorn snack. He called Nutrinuts. We renamed it to Grandpa Poe's Originals. And at that point, it was a national brand. We were the snack of the day in the Rachel Ray show. And so I built a factory out in LA and we were doing pretty well. But so that took over most of my time. So I let my acting career kind of peter out because also as we get older, especially if you don't have a big a name or great agents and stuff like that, things kind of slow up in your 50s for the guys. Unfortunately for the women, it slows up earlier. But the most important thing at that time was to keep the snack food company going because that had a big emotion attached to it being something we did for our father. So that was important. And then I was never married, had no children. Some people say I had a commitment issue, which I have to agree, probably. Um, and then in February of 2011, I got a call from my brother saying our mother was on her deathbed. And so that started this whole journey. So she had 6 children, so we all came home and we were preparing to say goodbye to our mother. And the doctors cut off all food and meds, and hospice was called, and they said she's transitioning, and hospice will make her transition as smooth as possible. And we were kind of freaking out because 14 years earlier, my hospice was called for my dad, and he died 2 days later. So we
Wow.
were on high alert, and so that's how the subject of the book all got started.
So, what was your relationship with your mother like growing up and as adults before you got this call?
Well, I had a great relationship with both of my folks. I think as we got older, you start to see them as a person, and they both became really good friends of mine. I enjoyed both of their company, and I moved out just after turning 18 to go to college, and I never really lived back at home again. So when my parents came out to visit me, sometimes together, sometimes separately, I had them all to myself, which was great. So I got to know them in a different way than just being a parent. And I was also a very curious kid. So I asked a lot of questions and dug into family history and got them both to open up about things they rarely wanted to open up about. They both grew up in the Depression era, and that generation didn't talk about their feelings and they didn't talk about pain. And it was tough to get them to open up, but I did it. It might have been part of my acting training or whatever, but I got them both to open up, and we became a lot closer when I got to see them as full human beings and not just mom and dad.
So, I know you said your father had passed away earlier. Did this subject, like with your mom, of caregiving or anything like that ever, like, is that something you all had talked about?
Well, with mom, no. At this point, she didn't need. She was living in the house we all grew up in, and she could still walk. She no longer drove, but we had a family living upstairs that was overseeing household duties and did the cooking and shopping for her. And she would go to the senior center several times a week to keep active. And I think that she just was not happy. She suffered from some depression that ran in her family, her side of the family, and she hid it very well during my lifetime. And I think it really started to come out in her later years. And she was not happy in the house. She was not happy with the people who were living there. And I think it just got to her after she turned 89, and then a couple weeks later is when I think she just said, "I'm not happy with what's going on here, so I'm out of here." And she kind of willed herself to die.
Mhm.
There was no medical reason. There was no physical pain or anything like that. She just seemed to want to go. So it was almost like she was in a self-induced, I called a semi-comatose state. She laid in bed. She didn't respond to anything. She didn't ask for food. Occasionally, we moistened her lips and stuff for some comfort, or maybe gave her like an ice cube to suckle on. But there was no talking. She barely opened her eyes. She did respond a little bit to touch once her kids all started coming home, and I started to realize that I think that she wanted. It was I have a chapter in the book called "A Silent Scream." I think it was a cry for help, and she wanted love back into her home and certainly back into her life. And so, with all her kids being there and wanted her to stick around, I think she kind of picked up on that. And about 3 or so weeks later, she snapped out of it.
Wow. So when you got the call, you're thinking because of with your dad how fast it had happened, you're probably thinking it's a very short period that you have
Yeah,
left with her. So
yeah,
how did it feel when the days became weeks and she was improving?
yeah. Well, the improving kind of happened quick. Um, uh, what was nice about hospice being there was my younger sister and I hung out with them from day one because we wanted to care for our mother as much as we were allowed to for as long as she wanted to be there. So hospice was very generous in teaching us the tips and tricks of how to, take change. At that point, she was wearing diapers and how to change the bedding with the helpless patient in bed, how to deal with bed sores. She had some bed sores, and I guess just the overall care, how to sponge bathe her correctly and how to move her in the bed. At that point, she never got out of the bed, but we did have to roll her back and forth to do things and to do that gently because at that age, things are a little more fragile. And then we taught what we learned from hospice to my older brother and sister. So they filled in when we went and took a break and stuff like that. So we always had one of us around there. But we also found out from hospice that a lot of them don't follow the directive. The directive was no medications, no food or drink, let her transition. And this one nurse came in, this was probably about 3 weeks in, came in and we showed her the directive and she read it and she went, uh-huh. And she went into my mother's room and my mother's eyes are closed. And she, again, she's not responding and hasn't talked in weeks. And this nurse leaned over and said, Mrs. Porro, are you hungry? And my mother's eyes snapped open like a dinner bell went off. And it was like, oh my gosh, she's awake. And then this nurse accused us of trying to starve our mother to death,
Wow.
which was not the case. We were obeying orders. But from what that nurse did, she didn't follow the directive. She kind of followed her own prescription for what I guess what she saw and what she assessed when she saw my mother in bed was this lady's not ready to die, so she needs to be fed. And so that nurse had to leave because she broke the rules. Her supervisor said we're going to send in someone else, so she left. In the meantime, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, are we starving our mother to death? And so I went in and I asked my mom, are you hungry? And she said, well, what do you got? And those were her first words in weeks.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. So I said, anything you want. And this is now March. We're into March. And she says, how about some pumpkin pie? Well, it's not really pumpkin pie season. So I was like a little worried. But I went out in the living room. My brother, who lived locally, took on the challenge to go find some pumpkin pies. And he came back probably within 30 minutes with two pumpkin pies. I don't know where he got them. I don't know if he baked them himself or what, but I gave mom a spoonful of pumpkin pie and she spit out the first spoonful. And I said, well, that didn't go so well because this was her first food in weeks. So I said, let's try it again. The second spoonful went down and she ended up eating half the pumpkin pie.
Wow.
And whether it was a sugar rush or whatever, she was back. She was alert. The color came back in her face, and that's when we knew she was on the road to recovery. So that was super. So never underestimate the power of pumpkin pie.
Well, so did you get rid of hospice at this point then, or?
No, at least in New Jersey, when they're signed on, they stay for, well, it usually doesn't end well. But if the patient survives, they stay on for 6 months. So it
Interesting.
was great to have them there because my mother still, the issue living upstairs was still present. And so I stuck around for a few months and wanted to make sure she was definitely on the mend. And knowing that hospice would be there for a couple more months, I had to go back to LA to take care of some business and stuff. And then later in the year is when I moved back and took over full time.
So what made you decide to go back and do it full time?
Well, it's my mom, and while I was there and observing the house that we all grew up in, it was in need of a repair, and there was no love in there, and I felt my mom deserved better, and I thought I was the guy who would be able to do that. My older brother lived locally, and he would stop in the mornings and the evenings. But still, if a family member wasn't there, my mom had to really rely on these people who she didn't like. And so I felt that that burden was on my brother for quite a while because I was, living the bachelor life in California. And so when I came back, I guess part of it was guilt, but also part of it was I wanted to do the right thing. It was my mom. She deserved better. So I wanted to make sure her last years were as happy and healthy as possible.
All right, Willie, this is a very compelling story with a lot of twists and turns. What are you thinking?
Well, I do want to know, how did you come up with the title for the book?
Okay. Well, I'll give you the short story. We'll get into part of the more in-depth story a little bit later, if that's okay. Um, so while I was writing, I didn't know I was going to write a memoir. I have a writing background, and in Hollywood, I wrote screenplays and I did stand-up comedy, so I wrote jokes and things like that. So writing was kind of second nature, and being there full time with my mom, I was privy to some really interesting moments and some really fun conversations. And I didn't want my siblings to miss out on this stuff. So I started recording it, writing it down. I shot videos and a lot of photographs. And so that was my main intent. But I learned some really good stuff from hospice. And while I was there with my mom, I had a friend who was going through something like this with her father. And so I shared some of the things I learned from hospice and then some of the things I was doing for my mom, and she got some benefit out of it. And so I said, oh, maybe I have a book here. If I can help and inspire others to come and do this stuff, that would be great. So while I was writing the book, I had another a title actually in mind. And one of the simple gestures, we came up with a couple of really interesting routines that were lovely. My mother's favorite beverage was a cup of hot tea, skim milk with no sugar. And so I served that quite a bit. And then we had to put a commode bedside because it was too hard or too dangerous to get her in and out of the bathroom at this point because I had to carry her most places. And so sometimes Mother Nature on the commode took a little longer than was comfortable for either one of us. So one morning, kind of as a joke, I said, would you like a cup of tea while we're waiting? And she said, sure. So I made her a cup of tea and she had that and it became a hit. So one of our morning rituals became a cup of tea on the commode. So I thought it was a catchy title. And so far it's turned out to be just that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Um,
I like that.
what's the hardest part of caregiving that maybe, not hospice, not anything really prepares you for?
Well, I'd have to say, from a son's perspective, it was a little awkward because I'm seeing my mother naked for the first time.
Yeah.
And when this all started, she was just turned 89. So you're seeing what the years have done to her and gravity and the years can be unkind. So that was a bit of a shock. But I think this is when my acting kind of kicked in because I said, I am now going to be the caregiver. So I have to get over this awkwardness and get on with it because I have a job to do. And I didn't want my mom to feel uncomfortable. So I tried to bury any of my emotions or any discomfort, or certainly tried to keep that out of the room as much as possible, and then got on with it. But it is a very stressful job. It is mentally, emotionally, and physically exhausting. But I have a motto, and again, some people think it's corny, but I've lived by this most of my life. I've had a pretty adventurous life, and I, I I jump into things and I give it my all, and sometimes they fail, sometimes they are successful, but I always go in with my motto, which is find the joy. And if you look for the joy and the positive in any experience, it just makes it so much lighter and so much more, I would say, fun and inviting. And so that was kind of the thing that led me through this. I said, I'm going to make this as much fun. Actually, when I asked my mom for permission later that first year, she agreed. She said yes, and I said, just so you know, we're going to have fun. And I had a goal to make her laugh at least once a day. And both of my parents were pretty funny people, and so she ended up making me laugh quite a bit. And so humor played a big role. With the stress, the pros say take breaks. The caregiver has to take care of themselves first so you can be the best caregiver as possible. So your health is very important. And I didn't listen to that because I said, I'm a guy, I can handle this, but it creeps up on you. And it did get to me. And my mom, I don't want to ruin it, but there's a chapter in the book where my mom almost outlived me. And
Wow.
that's not unusual because of the stress. And so I would say for anybody taking this on, you got to listen to the pros. And the pros, one of the first things they say is you got to take breaks.
So what did you learn about your mom, personality wise, that maybe you hadn't noticed before?
Well, I knew she was stubborn. I knew she was independent and, um, uh, and a shopaholic. That's what we grew up with. But she was great, and she worked full time. But she worked the night shift. She was a proofreader at the largest newspaper in New Jersey, and boy, she would come home from a whole night of work and just want to take us out shopping. That was her addiction. She didn't drink or smoke or swear. Shopping was her outlet, and so I think the toughest part. I don't think there was any surprises with my mom, other than now that she's in my care and basically my child, I had to put up with all that stubbornness. She could be a tough cookie. And I say in the book, she had a very accurate BS detector. And if that thing went off, which it did with the people living upstairs, she was very tough to get back. But I was aware of that. So she knew um, well, she trusted me, and I knew kind of how to deal with her. So if she ever got to a point where she was being difficult, I would try to out guilt trip her because she would, guilt trip me quite a bit. And I learned from one of the best. And so I sometimes had to use not only charm or humor, but guilt tripping also. If she wouldn't do something that I knew was going to be important for her to do for her health and stuff like that. So it was a bit of a battle at times. But again, the overall thing was I wanted to put her first and keep her safe and healthy and happy as best I could. And so that put a lot of I guess, putting the focus on her helped me deal with any of the difficulties I had.
Did you do any like online shopping together or anything like that? Uh,
Definitely not together. No, that was a bad thing. That's like bringing out, alcoholic to the bar. But I
Mm.
did have to go shopping. I like buying things. I did not like shopping. My mother could go shopping for 8 hours, and always came back with something, but sometimes not much, and that didn't interest me. But I do like buying things. So one of the first things I wanted to do with my mother, and again, this might be the son's perspective. I wanted to return her dignity. I didn't think she had much, and I think that might have been one of the reasons she wanted to leave this world. One of the first things I did was I bought her a new wardrobe. I wanted to feel good about what she was wearing and how she looked. And part of that might have been selfish too, because I felt my mom didn't look that great. Even when my sisters took care of her, they really didn't take care of her hair, and they didn't give her any makeup, and they didn't. There was no lipstick. The only thing that I saw that made me smile when I first got back there were her nails were done, and my mother's nails were like the crown jewels. And so when I grew up, she would always go to the beauty parlor for once a week for a shampoo and set and get her nails done. That was her treat. Even raising the six kids and working full time, that was her treat for herself. And so when she would visit me in Los Angeles, I would take her to my friend's beauty salon in Beverly Hills, and there she got the movie star treatment, and I knew that was a big treat for her. So when I got home after buying the wardrobe, I created what I called a day of beauty. which was I wanted to recreate that spa or salon treatment at home. And so I made a special day, and we did it on Saturday where she always, I always gave her two sponge baths a day anyway. But she got a sponge bath. But before that, we went on the commode. And while she was on the commode, I would soak her feet in Epsom salts. I would shampoo and wash her hair and condition it. And then when we finished up on the commode, she would get the sponge bath and a full body massage with lotion and then the baby powder. And if she had any bed sores or any medical needs, I tended to those. And then she picked out her new wardrobe, and I got her up and in the wheelchair, and then I blow dried her hair and put it in a ponytail or for bonus points, a braid. I grew up with three sisters with long hair, so I learned how to do more than just put the toilet seat down. And so all that experience growing up with the girls was very helpful in my later years. And um, and then I did my mom's nails. Had to be very careful with those, and she kept her eagle eye on me the whole time. And then I finished it off with some bright red lipstick to match her nails. And I thought it was a nice thing, not that big of a deal. But when I wheeled her in, after we were done with the first day of beauty, I wheeled her into the kitchen. And as we go through the dining room, there's a big mirror on the dining room wall. And I parked her in front of that mirror, and she just beamed at her reflection. And
Oh,
it made me realize that uh, wanting to feel pretty doesn't fade with age. And I don't know the last time she looked in the mirror, and I don't know the last time she looked in the mirror and liked what she saw. But what she saw that day was just very, it killed me almost. I thought, oh my gosh, this is profound. The effect on her and the effect on me was just huge for that little gesture. And so every morning from then on, I parked her in front of that mirror, even between days of beauty, and just said, "Who's that pretty girl?" And she just smiled from ear to ear. So it was
Oh.
fabulous.
All right, Willie, I know you have to leave us soon, but do you have a final question you'd like to ask before?
uh, let's see. Yeah. Yes. Do you feel like that caring for your mother has it made your relationship stronger than the relationship you had with her when you were growing up with her?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Um, I learned during this experience what real unconditional love was. At that point, especially not having children or no wife, I lost pets, and I thought I knew what unconditional love was. But when you're caring for a loved one, whether it's a child or your parent, my motto in the past has been, especially with relationships, was when I got bored, I walked away. And and in this instant, there was no walking away. So whether however tough it got, or there's times you have a child and you learn that, boy, there's sometimes you want to kill them, but you can't. And so you gotta deal with the thick and thin, and so I really learned the true meaning of unconditional love. And I'll tell you. So another thing, a big revelation for me after writing the book, because what's interesting when you write memoir, they say you really discover a lot about yourself. And so this story sounds like Mark went home to care for his mother and pretty much rescued his mother. And in a sense, yes, I did. Uh, but after I wrote the book and I stepped back and looked at it from fresh eyes, a new revelation came out of that. And I think that maybe mom rescued me, because at that point, I hadn't done anything that spectacular in my life. I did some good things and I had some nice successes and things like that, but this was the most important thing that I could do. And my mom gave me that opportunity, and luckily I was smart enough to jump on it. And so I think that was the special thing that I got out of it. That I didn't realize, I think, during, but I certainly did after. That was a lovely gift that my mom gave me.
So, well, during the experience of caregiving or of writing the memoir, did you change? I know you realized some things, but did that change who you were and how you maybe had closed yourself off to other people? Like you said, when you got bored, you would just abandon the
Yeah.
relationship. So, did that change for you?
You know what? I think so. Yes, because um, I'm certainly I had a pretty good amount, I think, of empathy, a pretty good grasp of empathy. But boy, when you go through experience like that, you really learn how to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And again, roll with the punches. Don't take things personally. You have a job to do, and do it as best you can. And have patience. Patience was another key thing that I learned because growing up in New Jersey, really close to New York City, we don't have a lot of patience. It's like, things we hustle, hustle, hustle. Um, but I have, yes, in my current relationship is the longest relationship I've had. Um, and we're going on, I think, 8 years.
Wow.
And I've learned that during the tough times when normally I would say I'm done, this is not good. I hang in there, and I'm sure she is, hung in there as well. And it's because you see beyond, I guess, the current stress or the current argument or those little things that really don't mean that much. And so I think that, yeah, what mom taught me during this journey, I think, has really affected my life. And I'm certainly I gravitate towards older people. I live in a small village in France now, and there's a woman who's in her 90s now, and I call her Madame Simone, and she's just lovely. And I always, whenever I see her, I always stop to say hello and stuff. And I don't know if I would have done that without this experience. So I definitely gravitate towards the older people, men and women.
So, when the time came for your mom to pass, how how was that for you versus how it would have been, had she passed in those first couple of days when you originally got called?
Wow. Well, I have to say, because of this journey, and even with my dad, I'm writing a book now focusing more on my dad. I only had 8 days with my dad, but I was with him when he passed. And I had 3.5 years with my mom, and I was with her when she passed. And both of them, we had, I think, uh, good closure. I don't think there was anything left unsaid. My dad was still very sharp and talkative until like his last day. My mom was very quiet and didn't talk all that much during these 3.5 years. She was a social butterfly before this, but she was very quiet and introspective. And it was nice though, because we would respond sometimes just holding hands. And there was so much love in that simple touch of holding a hand. She liked hugs and she certainly liked kisses. Um, but for me, it definitely made her passing certainly easier. If it happened within those, that when this thing first started, boy, I don't know, I'd probably still be in therapy.
Yeah.
Um, I, yeah, so I was very, again, fortunate to be there and to do what I did because it made the I'd say the whole journey, including her leaving, much easier. And I think it also made it much easier as I talked to my siblings for them because they knew she was loved and well cared for. And so it helped them to know that mom had the best end of life experience that she could have had.
Is Do you think that men like that often we think of caregivers or that vulnerable type as being females more than men. Like, do you think that, did you ever see yourself in a caregiver role?
Well, yeah, I think, we were brought up in a very nurturing, loving family. So, 2 years before my dad passed, I took him to the little village in Italy where his father came from. And at that point, my dad was 80 years old and suffering from heart disease. But he really wanted to go on this trip. And so we spent 16 days in Italy, just the two of us. And I didn't know, nobody told me how bad his condition was until we got there. And then I realized that, his life was in my hands for those 16 days. So that added some stress to it, but also he, like my mom, was a tough cookie, and he wanted to go, and we made the best of it. We had some lovely, lovely moments, and especially when we got to this little village of 200 people up in southern Italy mountains and stuff like that. So that was, I think, my probably my first time caregiving, because I'd take care of them and make sure we didn't push too hard. And then of course when you're sleeping, you're worried that when you wake up he may not.
Right.
Um, and so that was a bit stressful. So luckily his humor helped me get through that. And of course the sights in Italy didn't hurt either.
So when you look back on the experience, how long after your mom passed did you decide to write the memoir, and why did you feel like that was the time?
Well, I continued to take notes all the way through. So I had it, and after I realized that I think I could help others through my experience, um, that it was going to be a book. And I hadn't written a book before, and I hadn't written memoir, the genre. So I had to study the genre. And so I took classes and stuff online, actually, because I'm very emotional when it comes to family. So there's no way I could have written this shortly after her passing. So it wasn't until I moved to France, where I had some emotional distance and also physical distance, that I could sit down and write the book without uh, soaking the paper or my computer keyboard. And so once I felt pretty comfortable in the genre, and also read a bunch of memoirs to learn what I could from them, I started writing, and my goal was to get published. And I found a publisher, actually two publishers, that were interested in it. And I think from the son's perspective is something that's a little more unique. And so I went with the publisher who seemed to be more interested in quality as opposed to speed. And they've been great. And so I became a published author in my 60s, which was kind of interesting. And Yeah, so that was it. So it was at least a few years before I could write the book.
And once you completed it, I guess was the writing of the book cathartic for you? How did you feel once you concluded that?
Well, yes, it's definitely, again, like I said, you really learn a lot about yourself. And so you learn these early experiences in life and how they affect you in your adult life. And I have a really good memory of, especially way back when. I have a couple of very vivid memories when I was 2 years old. And one of those is in the book because it was a shopping experience with my mom. And, and so once I started telling the story of what, chronologically, what I did over the 3.5 years, would be kind of boring for somebody. That would be like somebody's diary or their journal. So I wanted to add backstory that help support why I made certain decisions because of my upbringing. with mom and dad, and certainly my siblings. And so those were important. And once I started opening that memory box, boy, these things came flooding in. And that was what I found really exciting about the writing, because they just kept opening up other memories and sparking other ones. And I had to go through and edit and to make sure, the ones I was writing in the book had something to do with our story. Um, so that was, I think, writing is very difficult, especially when you're writing memoir. But boy, when those things, those memory doors kept opening and open, that was a very exciting part. So that certainly made it a lot easier. But um, yeah, and it was definitely cathartic because there's moments I'm going, oh my gosh, I didn't think that it was like Day of Beauty. I didn't think that much of it at the time, but now, boy, is this relevant to what we went through.
So, have you received a lot of stories back from other people who read the book and said, their experience or how the book might have helped them?
Yeah, I think one of the best things, uh, again, when you write something and you put your heart and soul into it, you don't know how it's going to resonate or if it will resonate with anybody. And this thing is done very well with sales. It's won 18 literary awards so far, so it's done well there. It's selling pretty well around the world. It's also going to be published now in China, in Taiwan, and South Korea, and we'll get some more countries in there as well. But I've gotten, I think the most important thing, and I guess maybe the most surprising thing, are the personal notes that I've received from people. Some who actually knew our family, or knew, one of my siblings. There's some people who have written me that knew my folks that I didn't know they knew my family, and other strangers that are just, it's just fabulous. They said that, this helped them get through what they had to get through. There was one that I don't know this person, but I think she's from my hometown. And she wrote me and she says, just want you to know that I'm reading your book to my mother. She's 95 years old, and we're really having a good time with it because people say they laugh out loud and they cry out loud. So I know it's very entertaining, even if people are not interested in caregiving. There's a lot of fun stories in there. Um, and then a year later, she wrote me and says, I want you to know that my mom is now 96 and we're reading through your book again because we loved it so much the first time. And then a few weeks later, she wrote me and she said, just so you know, my mother passed,
Aw.
but your book helped me so much, especially the humor to get through and to say goodbye to my mom. And I said, oh my gosh, that just killed me. So those are just a lovely, unexpected gifts that people give you. Again, you pour your heart and soul, and you hope it's going to touch people. But boy, when they write you these notes that, and in fact did touch them, it's just beautiful.
Um, do you find or have you thought about like why it is that your mother had kind of willed herself to die in the beginning because she was depressed and not really connecting, I guess, not, you said she was a social butterfly, earlier in life. So when, what is the significance that you've found with isolation and how that, impacts the elderly um, to want to remain alive?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think the social aspects are very important. If you read about, let's say, these blue zones that are around the world where the people all live to, their 90s and also several of them into their hundreds, one of the main things is the social life that they have and they maintain. So they have their friends and family, and family gatherings, and whether they do an activity of playing cards or playing chess or something, it's all very important. So um, we seem to take a lot of those things for granted. It was just like wanting to feel pretty doesn't fade. Those are things we think, oh, they're old, they don't care about these things, and they do. Hugs are also very important. My mom and I, that was another one of our rituals we came up with because as you're older, usually you're in bed most of the time, and it's very difficult or can be painful for a good hug. And when I got my mom ready in the morning, I would stand her up before putting her into the wheelchair, and I'd say morning hug, and we just squeezed each other, and neither of us wanted to let go. It's just those beautiful little things, those things of I guess showing your love, and touch is important. And even when my mom is, she wasn't as talking as much, but I could tell she was happy and she was enjoying her life. And you'd get a smile from her. Or if I teased her about, she had dentures, and if she took I rarely ever saw her without her teeth growing up. But now I had to do it several times, a day to
Yeah.
take them out and clean them for her. And I'd say, "Hey, you look cute without your teeth." And she would pinch my nose, thinking, you quit teasing me. And she did. She was a cute little old lady. Um, so those little things are really important. And so if anybody else gets anything out of this, just show your loved one that you care. And sometimes it's just being there, and being there, or holding their hand, or whispering sweet nothings in their ear, or a kiss or a hug if you can do that, or cook for them. If you're uncomfortable doing the caregiving, because there was no line that we didn't cross, so it gets pretty messy and stuff like that. I'd say if you're uncomfortable doing it, don't do it, because you don't want your loved one to feel guilty or feel like they're a burden to you. So hire a pro to do that, or fake it. I'm sure I faked it a number of times, and again, that's where the acting came in. But you want to make sure that they know that this, at least with my mom, because one time she did ask me, "Why am I doing this?" And I said, "Because it's an honor for a son to take care of his mother." And
Aw.
she was shocked. And I had to prove that to her. And I think over time she got to know that, yes, this is in fact true. He really likes doing this.
Um, I know you said that now you speak a lot to, if you see someone elderly, that you make that point to have a conversation and, you know, um, do you find by culture, like of living in France, is there more appreciation for elderly and family than perhaps in the US or
I would think yes, but to be honest, I've talked to some of my French friends, and it's not that much different.
yeah,
Not too long ago, we normally had three generations within the same home.
right?
And what was lovely about that is, unfortunately, I only had one grandparent. My dad's mom was the only one living in my lifetime, and so when we went to see grandma, it was great. She was lovely and stuff, but she lived an hour and a half away. And um, uh, I would think in other cultures they would be a little more nurturing, or more the have the three generations living. But France, it's getting like my French friend says, no, we have old age homes here, and if they're a burden, that's where they go.
Mhm.
And it's unfortunate, but I think what's good about my story is it's universal, and it's timely, and it's timeless, because in almost all cultures, we're all living longer, and this is going to become a crisis. Uh, it may be a financial crisis already, but definitely a health care crisis. And I hope more people will do this, because there's so many wonderful benefits to it, but also it puts less of a burden on the systems, the health systems in any country. Um, but yeah, I would have to say, unfortunately, it's not that much different than in the U.S.
So for people that want to read the book, or learn more about your upcoming projects, um, where is the best way to stay in touch with you or purchase the book?
Well, if they Google a cup of tea on the commode, we're everywhere. Of course, it's on Amazon. It's in some bookstores around the country as well, but definitely on Amazon or Barnes and Noble online. Um, but a cup of tea in the commode. I've got a YouTube channel. The website is a cup of tea in the commode.org. Everything from Facebook to LinkedIn to Instagram to TikTok. The YouTube channel has a bunch of fun videos, and you'll get a little bit of an idea of my mom's sense of humor and stuff like that. So, and if they want to email direct, it's a cup of tea on the commode at gmail.com. So they can easily find me.
Well, this has been a very beautiful story, and I'm so glad that we had you as a guest today to share it. Um, February is often thought about as romantic love, but there's so many kinds of love, and this is just a really beautiful example of that. So I appreciate you sharing it with us, and I hope that everyone will make an effort to reach out to someone, whether, it's their parents or someone who um, is elderly that needs that social
Connection.
love, yes,
Yes.
connection. So important. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, I
And
appreciate the opportunity to share my mom's story. So thank you.
yes, she sounds like a beautiful lady, and I'm glad that I'm glad that you told about, that the difficulties of it, but also the rewards, which it sounds like there were so many more rewards than,
Yeah,
yeah. So,
definitely. Yes.
all right, again, you come back, anytime when you have your next book or project. We'd love to hear from you.
Okay, great. I will definitely keep in touch.
All right, thank you.